renewals on the August ballot. And then
One of
we
them's
come in with
elder,
the-
one of them's Parks and Rec, what was, it's right on the front of the enterprise.
So
I
if
still
we
have
could
mine.
call Barb Byram's office
Yeah.
and find out when the county is putting, cause I think there's a total of like 6, and they may be splitting them up, they may be putting them all on
And Nisa
one.
wants to sign their 2 at the same time.
Yep, and
Yeah.
Nisa's going for 2.
So I think that,
So that's
we can
8.
say August or November would be the date to shoot for,
Yeah.
but I think we really need to get that date down and start moving on it.
August was state primaries?
Yeah,
State primary election.
and that's, I mean, we're going into the holidays. Can we have it ready by April 28th? Cause that's your deadline for August.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Why do you say that?
I just wanna make sure that,
Enough
because
time to market it?
we
kinda-
got,
we
we
get the
gotta
message
get
out,
out
what you
there and,
Door to door.
yep, you've got it, it's walking door to door, it's going to service organizations because word of mouth travels, and
Sure.
so making those presentations at, Wasso and Kiwanis and Eagles and
say. Okay.
Rotary and all that type of stuff, and then doing those focus groups, and not even maybe focus groups, but just resident information sessions on here's what's coming and here's why we feel it's a good thing.
So after you talk to, the county clerk and get that battened down, we can pick one of those dates. So what kind of action do we need to take to do this?
No action tonight. I mean, this is just a work.
It doesn't
Are
take
we-
any sort of council action?
It will take council
Yeah,
action.
eventually
yes.
you have to approve a resolution,
Yep.
which has the language.
Are we
Yeah.
still thinking about the same millage rate that we passed last year? Is that?
Oh, you mean that we talked about the 3.94?
Yeah, well, at one point I thought we passed it, and then we had to repeal it,
So you really, there's not a lot of room to go more than that.
cause we're at our max.
We're at the max.
So we're gonna shoot for a council meeting to put it on the agenda as an action item?
Once you get all the, do you want another work session just to bring all the pieces
I think-
together, or,
I think first quarter,
okay,
is that,
like January?
that's pretty general still, but.
I'm game.
January, February, yeah, I am too. We can talk about it until,
Right,
I think it comes down to, we don't have a lot of choices
We don't.
here. It's, nobody likes doing this,
No.
but if,
and you know what, the residents will be the voice, and it may not pass this time, but if we get it out there, at least they know we're serious about making a difference and fixing the problem.
well, the
Well,
last
and if
2
it-
months, we've had a major sewer plant repair for 10,000-ish,
Yep,
those big giant lip
Yep.
things.
yep, the
And
lifts,
then we just had another major repair.
Yep.
Um,
5 or so grand.
yep, yep.
I just think we need to move and set some days.
And like I said, at least the residents will finally see that we are serious about wanting to fix the problem, but we've got to have buy-in from them. It may not pass the first time, but, I can remember years and years voting against the school millage, and then finally it passed. So, you just keep throwing it at the wall, and eventually it's gonna
Would
stick.
do you any good to kind of put out, like, this is how much more a year we're talking? Because
No,
most people
we
can't
will.
translate.
We will.
Oh, yeah, all
We
that,
will.
We had
Yep.
plans on what the,
Yep,
to do a block, it's 800,000,
Yep.
this does the road, the
Yep.
curb, the gutter,
Yep.
everything.
No, like what it hits a personal resident at.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's not on that
it'll,
screen.
it'll be how much it's gonna come out of your wallet.
We had all that,
Yeah.
we had all
Yep.
that.
We are really ready to go on this as far as like what type of publications and everything we wanna do. It's just really deciding to do it, and I think we're at that point.
I know it's a lot of work by you, Corey, and your staff, but I know you guys do a great job.
Yep, absolutely. It's what you came to Williamston for. If you were in his interviews, you knew that he did his homework and he knew infrastructure was their
He
biggest
did.
problem.
Well, I think that line item analysis of what would have to go away to make that happen right now is pretty,
Yeah.
pretty
It
relevant
is.
too.
It is because that's
It's all-
that's
it's all
one thing
part
that
of the
we've
message.
always,
I
people
mean, not
have
that it's
always
an ultimatum
said.
like Gina was saying, right,
But very few communities have lead pickup,
Yeah.
The snow removal like we have.
Yep.
Our
Yep.
snow removal is like, people in Alaska could learn from us.
I know.
I mean, 24/7 police coverage.
Yep. Exactly.
You don't
And
know
you know,
why
and
the
here's the
county
thing
officer
too,
ever
we
reports.
always stay within budget for everything that we need. Chief is so frugal over there with, what he asks for and requests. We've never gone outside or over budget. So, Yeah, I think you spell it out for them.
So we just would need to put it on as action item in the first quarter, January hopefully,
Well,
Yeah. or
February,
February,
maybe.
close there.
well, there's some, you have to consult, I think you should, with, bond counsel.
Yeah, we have to bring them in
Okay.
again,
I
like
can't remember the
we had.
gentleman's name,
Yep.
but we had a meeting with him
Yeah.
last year.
Were you here for that? When he came in?
Yes.
Yeah, that was my first week.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Corey,
so just call him up and say, hey, can you come do that again for us? We got new members and just gotta,
But I think just right, everyone, I mean, everyone's right, transparency is.
yeah, it's huge.
That's the key to the success of it.
Yeah, we're not trying to slip anything through. You know, social media will be our friend, and
You mean this
I'll go
wasn't
check
the
and
real
see if
meeting we
Holly's
were
here
here
so
for?
she can get, in fact, I know she's gonna get you sworn in, Jeff, because she's got her registry book over there,
All right.
so,
We do need some help putting the chairs back.
Yeah.
Sit in the stands.
it's not been easy when it's not an actual staff member that could be, you know, that contact person here in the office for the businesses or the residents,
It's left a
so.
lot to be desired for the
Yeah.
4 years I was.
Right, I mean, you know the frustrations,
Yeah.
and so I think, you know, starting at this small point and having somebody inside, that's gonna be a big benefit to us, especially if things happen out at the industrial park or, you know, with Victory Meadows that's going on, and the potential out on Rowley, you know, just past where it switches from church, so there's stuff coming down the pipe.
So you're looking at 20 to 24 hours, not 30, so you're not offering benefits at this
Correct.
point.
Yeah,
I
that's,
think you can go up to 28 hours without offering benefits, cause that's
Just-
where the college is
Just
at.
asking questions.
Yeah,
yep.
but yeah,
Because it all adds cost on it.
Yeah.
And then, you've gotta have a job description or something put together that's pretty concise.
Yep.
would you use MML to look at other possible job descriptions, from
Yeah.
any other municipalities
Absolutely.
out there?
You know, one of the things that I've learned in talking with Williamston County is that a lot of their jurisdictions have somebody in kind of a part-time position
So you
doing this work.
So you could possibly
Yep.
tap
Now,
one of them, yes.
so what are the potential pitfalls? Well, one is, maybe there is not a candidate out there that would fit the needs we have on a part-time basis. I don't have an answer for that until I try,
Yeah.
right? So that's definitely a possibility. You know, in my career, going back to my time in Ohio, we had a lot of success with our part-time positions that were that had more of a professional slant. You know, we had a few people that had worked in their career, left the workplace to raise
Sure.
families, and that kind of thing worked really well. And so one of the things I wanted to mention is, you know, if we have a set number of hours and a pay range, and that tells me what our budget is, I'm open to all kinds of flexibility arrangements. If
Sure.
it means we can get, you know, I'd like to get 5 days a week, but even if it was 3 8-hour days, or
Sure.
4 days at 6 hours a day,
It's
you
more
know,
of a commitment
to
than what
work
we
with
have
somebody,
right now.
you know, I would like to do that if
Yeah.
possible.
Well, and I think you can utilize the different, listservs and stuff too, and, you know, MSU has a great urban planning, landscape development, you know, I mean, I don't, but they all have career service, you know, placement stuff for their graduates, and, well, exactly, you know, and that's not bad either, but, you know, there's great resources around here.
The other thing on the zoning side, you know, one of the things that I think is a fair criticism is our fee schedule is very high.
Mhm.
And part of that is because, like Noah just said, you know, we have that base level of service from McKenna, but if there's an additional review, there's usually an additional cost. And so
Right.
those have been worked into our fee structure.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think we would have the potential to try to make those a little bit more palatable to the development community. But we also wanna make sure that we are bringing in some revenue to help with the costs, that the city has for that position. The one piece of this that gives me some pause is if we have some of those complicated zoning deals where there's like a special land use agreement or a planned unit development, like Forest of Nottingham was a planned unit development agreement.
Mhm.
You know, we have a great resource in our city attorney, who I think can help between me, him, and this position. I think we can do it. But I know that, you know, even like Williamston Township, they have their part-time zoning person, but when they have some of those more complicated matters, they do have a planning and zoning consultant that they can rely on. And so that's the one piece of this that, you know, it gives me a little pause, because it's nice to have that when you need it, and there's probably a way for us to do that. But
Well, and how much of that is outsourcing for expertise versus mitigating liability and exposure?
Well, and we
It's a
talked,
good question.
about
it's
this.
Probably some of both, right?
Yeah.
And Wells Fargo, obviously, I'm certain the legal department, but we outsourced any representation
Yeah.
needed. I didn't represent the bank.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest, you know,
And I
the
think-
lawyers want to represent themselves, so.
And I think that's
Our-
something that we would do.
What's out there exposure wise, right?
Right. And
Yeah.
I think on that note, Jeff, I think there's been eras in our history where we have had issues. And so part of me has always wondered if that's why we have a lot of these relationships, was to mitigate that risk.
Yeah.
I can say yes.
Yeah, and I think if there's a big enough project where we need an expert to come in, I know that when Alan first looked at this, and we reduced our fees with McKenna and went from 3 days a week to 1 day a week, one of the options is if we did bring somebody in-house for those bigger, more complex projects, we would bid it out, and we would bake that fee into the project or into those project fees so that we could bring an expert in for that short, you know, span of time.
So that's a really good point, and the way that most communities do that is when you have like a major subdivision development, there's a fee structure that's like, this is your base fee, plus you pay for engineering, because a lot of communities don't have an engineer on staff. So we've been fortunate having Scott on staff, that he does those reviews for us. Historically, you know, pre-Scott or in a lot of other communities, you know, whatever that consultant's fee is, it's
Yeah.
just tacked on and the applicant pays that. So you could do that same model with a planning and zoning consultant if you needed it.
Would you change any of the ordinance though? Or would any appealable offense go to ZBA, or would it stay the same? Or would there be more steps to internally mitigate that sort of risk exposure item to make it more efficient, more stopgaps?
Right.
A quicker appeal that before it went to ZBA, who meets,
Once a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If needed.
So,
Right.
so there's a lot of questions, just like we had the $2,500
Yep.
cost for the ordinance. Is that something that the part-time person is going to dig into the new projects over a period of time as well?
That would be
Yeah.
my intent, yeah.
Yeah.
Between, so
like you'd be an appeal level.
some,
right?
yeah, so some of that is dictated by the Planning and Zoning, or the Zoning Enabling Act and the Planning Enabling Act at the state of Michigan. So if you have a zoning code, I think the ZBA is the appeal board for that. Now, are there some more minor things we could do? We'd have to look, but.
That'd be interesting. Or
Well,
if this
and then-
person made the wrong call.
Right.
They
Yeah.
could, someone could complain to you and you say, you know what, that was
Sure.
the right call and it's gone.
Right.
If
And
people
I
are-
don't
Yeah,
even
you
know,
already put it
I mean, I know in my history of being here, we haven't had that happen, and that's been since 2016. And did you ever have it happen prior to? Where something went higher level? As far as
Yeah, I
appeal?
went to the court systems, yeah.
Yeah. So, maybe one time.
I just worry if once you
Yeah.
have someone part-time,
Sure.
right, who's out there driving around,
Well, that would probably
trying
be,
to drive me,
Yeah.
hey, that's wrong, and then,
Well, and
they're on a roll
I
and
wonder about that a little bit too, because
know,
right now we're a
they're kind of
complaint.
like double
well, I don't,
violations.
I think we
and-
would still remain complaint based. I don't think we're gonna stick anybody in a truck and tell them,
Yeah,
you've
no.
got free reign, go and, figure out every violation that's happening in
So if
Williamston.
it's like something's down or
right, no, I'm not
they
proposing.
see someone doing a roof.
I'm not
I think it's still
proposing,
complaint
yeah,
based.
we would, I don't think there's enough hours in the day if we were being proactive. Because just the complaint ones that we have, seem to take a long time. There needs to be a lot of follow through to try to get a result. They take a long time, and, we don't talk a lot about them because we don't like to throw people under the bus, but, there's a highly visible one across from the police department that
Yep.
has just gone on for a really long time, and there's a lot of frustrated neighbors, and it needs a chief to steer.
Those for sales.
Yep.
maybe that'll just be the solution that we've all been looking
But
for.
that also comes down to code enforcement too.
Yep,
We
it
have
does.
to fire everything else and then
Yep.
follow up and all that other
Yep.
stuff for the building codes and all that, so.
I think one thing that by bringing somebody in-house is definitely, you'll see a quicker turnaround on the complaints that come in, because you have somebody here dedicated to it. But as far as going out and like seeking out things that people are in violation of, I wouldn't be an advocate for that.
So when I worked for the city of Langsberg, they created a health and safety officer position. And they tacked it into the police department, and they basically just found a member of the police department that wanted an extra $50 a paycheck. And then through that, they took on the complaint-based aspect, where if there was a complaint, this particular officer was the one that would be the one to make themselves knowledgeable of all the codes and stuff, and then be the one to go and investigate that and you know, work it through to a resolution. But it was always just that one person, and just as compensation for that, it was like an extra $50
Sure,
a
like a
paycheck.
stipend like Rachel gets right now because of planning.
Right.
So how does that fit into what Mr. Yance is trying to work on with the NISA and going through and doing
With fire code,
food and that?
I think they're unrelated.
yeah.
Okay, I'm just,
Yeah,
because you're going into a building, you find something,
I think he means more like
I
if somebody calls and
understand.
complains about a couch that's been on the curb for 3 months.
but I understand, but you walk into you do a NISA fire inspection, you find electrical, you find structural, you find HVAC, you find other things that are not to code.
Yeah, I think that has to go down the NISA path, it wouldn't fall into
Okay.
this.
Just raising that, because I sat on the NISA meeting last.
Well, then, I guess to go a bit further on that point, why is this only a part-time and not a full-time position that works for him?
So I guess it's basically driven by budget.
Mhm.
There's simply not enough money in what we're currently spending for those services to support a full-time position. And I just don't think it's a full-time need at this time.
I could see it developing into it if we, things started going crazy.
Right.
But, yeah, to stay within the budget and not spend additional, fund dollars would be,
Well, because, I mean, it's not just a part-time salary, if you will, that's being paid, it's whatever Livingston is going to collect on the fee schedule, and then you add that all up,
Yep.
could that person replace what Livingston's offering?
Right, and that was like
You
going,
know, but like I said, it'd take a couple of years to just sort
yeah,
of
that would be growth.
analyze that, to Tammy's point, and it could
Well,
make
Corey's-
more sense to stay in-house for the whole thing, but.
Yeah,
Corey's point with that is he's worried about finding someone with a skill set that can do an electrical, a plumbing,
Right.
framing inspection, and do your zoning, and be a planning assistant. all in
well,
one
unless
person.
you take those trades and you contract out like state electrical
Yep.
inspector and you
Which
do
he
that.
already
and
does our
and-
area.
And and if you can farm that out where that person could satisfy it in-house and then grab those as needed, but I think
Well-
starting this way and then developing it over time,
Yep.
like Jeff said, that's probably more realistic.
I think that's a good idea, and I did have a thought, I know we're not thinking that way now, but we have
Right.
great resources in the Wilson Talent Center and the
Yep.
LCC West
Yeah.
Campus,
Mhm.
where they train these people in all these trades,
Yep.
so I don't know if any of the instructors or the graduates would then want the extra money for doing
We
the
have a
inspection.
great, student career services and everything.
We have like a nighttime professor even, right? But their day job is
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
2 jobs.
I would love to see a position description put together and, the fee structure from Livingston and compare and, keep moving this forward. Cause I think we're on the right path for it and I think that it'll be very welcome for residents and contractors and everybody coming in if we do make this switch. Cause it'll be nice to have somebody that is dedicated, in here.
And we're sure McKenna is just simply a 90-day notice, terminate for any reason whatsoever.
They were 60-day notice in their contract when we swapped them over to the 1 day a week and then special needs,
It
so
doesn't
we
have to
would
be
just
for
have
any
to
reason.
review it. Yeah,
Just still
Okay.
pull the contract.
Yeah.
and look
oh,
at
yeah.
yeah, oh yeah, we wouldn't just call them and say you're done.
it. You know, there's-
I don't think,
Well,
I think
does it
John
have
James would
automatic
like
renewal?
that.
Does it have an automatic renewal?
I don't think so,
Mm-mm.
but yes,
I'm just
Yeah,
I did talk with McKenna earlier this summer about looking into all this. So it, you know, at least at the executive level, there's some knowledge there.
Mhm.
But the rest of this with the Livingston County and the building, it's been very much just pursuing it, you know,
Mhm.
kind of independently.
we're just fact finding right now.
And quite frankly, you know, they're a willing partner, but they also have a approval process that, you know, involves elected officials and,
Yep.
so we've had a lot of discussions about, you know, why they wanna expand and the merits of that, and I think there's a lot of, good answers to that.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, it, you know, takes two to come together.
Right.
The fact that there's already a willingness to absorb that cost of the computer system, which, just a very quick note, they are completely electronic, so, if you get a permit, you can go out to their website and you can pull up your address and it shows anything that you've done, you can schedule your
great.
inspections online. We can go in there and get real-time updates, which is very helpful.
That's great.
So there's just a lot to like that, it's a very robust process, and, you know, just really excited about the potential, so. Really, they were looking for me, you know, if we continue to pursue this,
Mhm.
that, you know, we don't bring something forward and it falls on its face.
Right.
So I think just getting some general feedback was helpful. You know, I'm not exactly sure what the timeline would be. Obviously, we have existing relationships that,
Yep.
you know, we have to go through a process with, so,
Mhm.
yeah.
Great work. Very,
Alright.
very good work.
Any other
Yep.
questions, thoughts on that one?
Nope.
Just not on that relation,
Yeah.
but in the NISA meeting that we last had, they're looking to put an initiative to raise the millage.
Mhm.
And I just didn't know how up to date we were on that, so my vote was put it on hold until we had other prime members on to come back and they would get more information, and I wanna make sure you got it.
Got it, okay. Well, on that note,
Yeah, let's talk about the next
so, yeah,
exciting.
the other item is infrastructure, which,
Yep.
you know, we have two new council members. I think in my meetings with both of you, we spent a decent chunk talking about infrastructure and sort of the history of what the city's tried to do. Since I've been here, you know, when I first got here, there was, real momentum to try to put something on the ballot in 2018, and we essentially did not do that, push pause, allow me some time to get up to speed, and then take some time to really understand our options and study this. And, you know, I came to you a couple months ago and said I wanted to do a focus group process this fall, which I'm here to tell you today, we have not been able to get that off the ground this fall. So, you know, we're not any closer on the engagement piece of this than I wanted to be, a couple months ago. That said, you know, there's been a lot of talk at, the NISA level. You know, we're also hearing, there's a headline in the Lansing State Journal that the county
Yeah,
has,
it was in the
yeah,
enterprises. We
several
got two.
millage renewals,
Four.
It's gonna have it on the same
Yeah.
ballot, it's all gonna go.
Or.
several increases on the ballot, and, you know, I feel like I've been here long enough now that I can, you know, I haven't done this formal process to try to get feedback, but, you know, the tax rate in our county is such a hot button or pinpoint issue, with our residents, and, you know, we hear it at the counter, particularly during tax season, but I also hear it from businesses, and I hear it from developers. We just met with a developer recently, and, you know, he was just kind of griping about the tax rate in Ingham County and how it makes it difficult to do these large single-family developments. And so, you know, you hear that enough times, and it really makes you pause and have concern about trying to go out for something that would raise that further. But we all know that the flip side of that is severe cuts, right?
Yep.
And so it's just a very difficult issue to try to deal with in a compassionate way, I guess, which I think we try to do. So, you know, I wanted to provide that update and note that, you know, we were thinking that 2020, if we were gonna do something, would be the timeframe. There's essentially 3 dates: March 10th, which is the presidential primary, August 4th, that's the state primary, and then the general, November 3rd, which is also a city council election year. The March 10th one, I think, is pretty much out of the picture at this point. I don't know a whole lot about what's going on at the county level, but I know that they have at least one that's gonna be in March. And so, you know, if we were gonna do August, there's a deadline of late April, April 28th, and then November 3rd is July 28th. That said, I think you know, I wanted to re-engage because we do have 2 new council members since we've really last dove into this, and, I guess I'm looking for some direction, you know. I've told you sort of my general, impression of a lot of this.
And what will be on the ballot? Just to summarize?
Yeah.
So to summarize, we need to decide whether we're gonna put forward a millage request for infrastructure for water, sewer, mains, and surface. And, it's been a topic of discussion for the past 4.5 years, almost 5, even longer than that.
25 years.
25 years, but we've gotten serious about it because we've had a road surface infrastructure committee that back in 2016 suggested an income tax. They had done a study in comparison of Portland city of Portland, and what they tried to do back in the late 80s, early 90s, which was successful, but it was also a short period of time where they had an income tax. As a council, we decided that wasn't a road we wanted to go down, so then we, when Alan Dolly was still our city manager, we charged him with starting to put together millage language and what it would take to start getting some of these big projects done. Orchard Bismarck is one of our worst. William Street, McCormick, Went, Love is second. You know, if you look at Scott's map, which
Sure.
we'll have him show you at some point in
I
time,
think he's seen it over a period of time.
probably. And he's got ratings on all the surfaces. We've had Triterra come through and do the video of all of the sewers, which was grant supported. So we have everything in place to know what needs to be done when, but now we just have to figure out how we're gonna get the money for it. And so that's what brings us to talk of millage language. And we were really trying to do that. Tim had some millage language written up just before Alan's retirement, and then it just kinda got shelved.
We were looking at, what was it, about
4 mills, I think, is what we voted on.
3.94,
Yep, 3.94.
which raises just north of $400,000 a year.
And we know that there are certain streets within the city that do qualify for MDOT every 3-year cycle, just like our Middle Street project, and then the finish off on the millet. Anything that is considered to be a primary road is usually something that can be funded at that level, but secondary roads aren't. And so we've gotten some of our bonds paid off. We still have some left to go. And so without trying to upset the apple cart too much by raising water and sewer rates, going to the residents and asking for a millage, which would give us cash quicker to do projects, and then also always looking for those other funding supplement, sources,
it's on grant, all those other things.
grants and everything like that. I mean,
I'm,
so that's where we're at.
I'm sure this got talked about before I was on council. When I came in right when Alan was retiring and we were pushing the millage language and a lot of things had already been discussed. But this is what keeps getting brought up to me by residents, and I know it, I never got the numbers, but it's always, where can you find it within the city? So I think if we're going for a millage, we have to have the numbers ready. And I'm not advocating cutting layoffs, anything like that, but if we're taking this is what you're gonna lose. If you don't get, you're gonna, what's it gonna be? And I'm sure that's something that the roads workshop, or the roads committee went into, but that was prior to me. I had a guy 2 weeks ago. I said, well, asking me, because we were talking about it, he goes, well, what would you have to get rid of? I go,
Sure.
I know it'd be significant. Well, what would you have to get rid of?
Yep, and we've had that discussion, in our different work sessions and goal setting sessions, and Corey can probably go back through notes and stuff, but just from, because you and I were a part of them, we talked about cutting 24/7 police service, we talked about cutting, every other street light with DTE, we talked about cutting, you know.
Even subcontracting out.
Subcontracting out, that's why we started the road down with
Wastewater
McKenna, and
treatment
what could
plant.
we bring in
DPW.
in-house. We've talked about cutting, you know, the branch pickup, the leaf pickup, the snow removal, but those things will not amount to what it costs to
Yep.
take care of a city block. But yes, we can put it on paper and we can articulate it and we can show the residents that even with cutting these services, we will not save enough money in order to do what we want to do.
I agree, I'm just,
So,
this is
yes.
what I get when I talk to
Yep.
these guys.
Yep, yep.
It's, well, you, and the other one is, and I brought this up with Kara Hope and Alyssa Slotkin today in our meeting with them, is
Good for
every
you.
time
Thank you.
the state brings up a 45-cent gas tax hike, it comes, well, why am I gonna pay 45 cents more at the pump for every gallon, and then you wanna raise my, because that money doesn't make it to us.
Yeah, never will,
You know,
never will.
but that's what you're fighting against, it's because they think.
What was our answer today?
Well, what I said, well, I brought it up twice because Kara Hope was late, and then, it wasn't much. Well, if we would've just got the 45 cents, it would all be better.
Yeah.
Well, that got shut down, and I said, well, what we need you to do as a local municipality is we either need you to fund it or stop talking about it. Because
for
you're
you.
cutting us off, we cannot explain to our residents how you're talking about raising the taxes at the state level, but we can't pay for our streets with what you're doing. We either need you to give us the funding
Yeah.
or stop talking about it because you're cutting us off. We can't.
Is
Yeah,
it,
I didn't even roll into town until 20 to 5, and I was like, they're
Is-
probably already gone.
is it an either or thing, like if the millage doesn't exist, then we have to cut all this stuff, or does it just
No,
simply
it just-
extend out
it
how
just-
long it takes to pay for all
It just,
that
it's
stuff?
gonna extend out, and it's just gonna be us continually putting that money in the bank from what we get from water, sewer, and
So you could just keep repairing breaks and things.
we're just gonna be continually putting Band-Aids on.
It was what, about 4 years to save the money for our last major project, wasn't it? Wasn't that what it took to save the money through the general fund, or how, plus getting a grant, which we're not always gonna get,
Yeah.
and.
Yeah,
Well, that was gonna be my question,
Yeah.
was you referenced Portland and how they just did it for a set period of time, is that our intention as well?
well, for the
And then
millage,
if
I think, what we
so,
say,
how
10
many
year,
years?
and it would sunset in 10 year, and then it would, we could,
was
put it
either-
up
it was
for,
either 8 or 10.
renewal,
It was either 8 or 10.
8 or 10. 10 is the maximum, I think, is what,
We would need that long though.
yeah, what,
It depends. If your intent is just to pay cash, you would likely not have enough cash in the first year to do much. So as a price point, we just did a block of middle and a block of mullet, and it was about a $750,000 project, not including the engineering. So if you're gonna raise 400 grand, you know, you
Because
do it in 2 years.
I guess the further point, right, is this information is so useful to residents, if they transparently see
well, and that
all
was
of
our
that,
whole
right? Like,
plan.
here's what we have to get rid of, but in the absence of that, if we now do the mills,
Yeah.
then here's how long we only have to do it for, and then we're
Yeah.
good for whatever.
So Corey has that whole, when we're ready to go, he's got a whole media blitz of what we can publish, what we can hand out. But we've gotta get to the point where we flip the switch and say, let's go.
Right, 'cause that's where it's
And
gonna
so,
happen, to
he know-
educate
yeah.
residents.
Because didn't we have a lot of data from LCL?
No, it was from Spring Arbor. Scott was able to bring it to us, cause when Spring Arbor County redid their roads, they did a huge thing, and I still actually have it in my office at home, and it was fantastic, it was so informative. And that's what we've talked about, is we have to be so transparent, and like he said, he
Yeah.
wanted to do the resident engagements, the focus groups and stuff, so, you know, we have to do that, and
So
we
when I
have
was
to
in
get out there.
Riverwood
Yeah.
and talking to residents of Churchill, they just don't care
Yeah.
about the infrastructure problem.
No, because they're also brand new too,
Yeah,
think
yeah,
about how
is that
old those,
affecting that?
yeah. And the only
Think
other,
about my street built 1928.
so one of the other things, Jeff, when we were sitting here throwing this around a couple years back and stuff, we were like, okay, income tax, no, that's not gonna fly, they'll be out on the front lawn with pitchforks and lanterns.
Yeah.
Then we
Is there-
said, special assessment, okay, William Street, McCormick, Wint, Love, you want your roads and stuff done, it's a special assessment and you residents pay for it.
Yeah.
That's not gonna fly. you
Is
know?
there an option to do a local sales tax?
No, not currently.
No,
There was, as part of that road package, when it didn't, at the state level, I'm sorry, when it didn't go anywhere, I saw there was a bunch of stuff that was put on the table, and one of them was to give the option to do, I think it was a county level sales tax.
Yeah.
Which I know you've had experience with down in
Yeah.
Florida.
Yeah.
But to my understanding, that does not exist today.
no, not in Michigan.
Is there a way to reconcile the actual water bill with any of this? That's gonna go away, but we need this now. Cause again, back to those two developers, the people I always talk to, is like,
Sure.
well, that was supposed to go away, and that's.
Right.
good."
Well, and we have the
Okay,
data.
who's the cheat on that?
We have the data, we have all of our bonds, we know when all of these are gonna be paid off, we can be as transparent as the day is long with what we're on the hook for, what it's gonna cost to pay them off, and we also, in our different budget sessions, we've, and I don't know if you still use Alan's spreadsheet, where you can sit there and forecast out, okay, if we left it at, no increase on water sewer, here's what we're gonna make, if we go next year and we do a 2.5% increase with 1.25 off of, water and sewer each, here's what we're gonna make, we do 6% increase. So we've got those spreadsheets where we can forecast out. That's the first thing the residents always come and say is, well, if you put this through, are you gonna roll back our water and sewer rates? Are we gonna, are you not
Well, I
gonna increase them or
remember,
roll them
I
back?
don't know, cause I didn't live here then,
Right.
but there was a promise to them that was made that it was temporary.
Yeah.
And,
don't know
and there
who-
was sour grapes in it.
Before my time.
Yeah, it was probably back with, I don't even know if it would have been John Pratt and Michelle, or if it would have been Zicky.
It was before that.
Yeah. So to answer your question, no, we probably would never do that, just because we financially we can't. I mean, we're penny to penny. When you look at our budgets, we're really penny to penny.
We look at the wastewater treatment plant, the
Yeah.
infrastructure there that needs to be brought up.
Yeah, I mean, we're working on that master plan right now.
Yep.
And how we're gonna, did
We're in a
did that
catch
property
22
ever
with
finally
that right
sell,
now.
by the way?
Right, yeah.
Okay, because I saw
we're-
the
And then that
sign.
whole
Sign.
neighborhood, right?
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
Corey,
So-
you talked about flipping the switch, what?
What do you need to flip it?
Yeah, let's flip it.
I know,
think we've been
right?
talking about a lot, so I think we need to act on it and we need to charge for it.
But I think we need to tell him when to flip it. Are we looking
Well,
at
right.
August or November?
So what do you think is the best election? I mean, you have experience.
My general feeling was August. I know previously some of the concern was if you do it at like a special election, that doesn't always.
You don't get a
fly.
great turnout.
So you wanna have a representative vote.
You don't need a level of turnout, do you?
No, I think the
Is it
concern
like
was.
10% or something you need, or?
No, I think the concern was more just like,
Other ballot measures that are dipping into other people's wallets too with these other county villages, right?
I think it was more, I think.
There's a perception sometimes when you slide something on a March or
Yeah,
May
sure.
ballot,
Yep,
that you're trying to slip it
under.
through, and that can get a backlash.
So you think the August date would be the best? Favorable?
I think some of that depends on the county millages. Personally, if the county's putting 4 millage renewals on the August ballot, and then
One
we
of
come
them's
in with
Elder,
the-
one of them's Parks and Rec, it's right on the front of the enterprise.
So
I
if
still
we
have
could
mine.
call Barb Byram's office
Yeah.
and find out when the county is putting, cause I think there's a total of like 6, and they may be splitting them up, they may be putting them all on
And Nisa
one.
wants to side there too at the same time.
Yep, and
Yeah.
Nisa's going for 2.
So I think that,
So that's
we can
8.
say August or November would be the date to shoot for.
Yeah.
But I think we really need to get that date down and start moving on it.
August was state primaries?
Yeah,
State primary election.
and that's, we're going into the holidays. Can we have it ready by April 28th? Cause that's your deadline for August.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Why do you say that?
I just wanna make sure that,
Enough
because
time to
we,
market it, kinda-
we gotta
the
get
message
out
what you're
there and,
Door to door.
yep, you've got it, it's walking door to door, it's going to service organizations because word of mouth travels, and
Sure.
so making those presentations at, Wasso and Kiwanis and Eagles and
saying. Okay.
Rotary and all that type of stuff, and then doing those focus groups, and not even maybe focus groups, but just resident information sessions on here's what's coming and here's why we feel it's a good thing.
So after you talk to, the the county clerk and get that battened down, we can pick one of those dates. So what kind of action do we need to take to do this?
No action tonight. I mean, this is just a work.
It doesn't
Are
take
we-
any sort of council action?
It will take council
Yeah,
action.
eventually
yes.
you have to approve a resolution,
Yep.
which has the language.
Are we
Yeah.
still thinking about the same millage rate that we passed last year? Is that?
Oh, you mean that we talked about the 3.94?
Yeah, well, at one point I thought we passed it and then we had to repeal it.
So you really, there's not a lot of room to go more than that.
Cause we're at our max.
We're at the max.
So we're gonna shoot for a council meeting to put it on the agenda? Is it an action item?
Once you get all the, do you want another work session just to bring all the
No,
pieces
I think-
together, or,
I think first quarter,
okay,
is that,
like January?
that's pretty general still, but.
I'm game.
January, February, yeah, I am too. We can talk about it until, you know,
Right,
I think it comes down to, we don't have a lot of choices
We don't.
here. It's, nobody likes doing this,
No.
but if,
and you know what, it's, the residents will be the voice, and it may not pass this time, but if we get it out there, at least they know we're serious about making a difference and fixing the problem.
well, the
Well,
last
and if
2
it-
months, we've had a major sewer plant repair for 10,000
Yep,
ish, those big giant lip
Yep.
things.
yep, the
And
lifts,
then we just had another major repair.
Five or so grand.
yep, yep.
I just think we need to move and set some days.
And it, like I said, at least the residents will finally see that we are serious about wanting to fix the problem, but we've got to have buy-in from them. It may not pass the first time, but, you know, I can remember years and years voting against the school millage, and then finally it passed. So, you just keep throwing it at the wall, and eventually it's gonna
Would
stick.
do you any good to kind of put out, like, this is how much more a year we're talking? Because
No,
most people
we
can't
will.
translate.
We will.
Oh, yeah, all
We
that,
will.
We had
Yep.
plans of what the,
Yep.
to do a block, it's 800,000,
Yep.
this does the road, the
Yep.
curb, the gutter.
Yep.
Everything,
No, like what it hits a personal resident at.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's not on that
it'll,
meeting.
Yeah.
it'll be how much it's gonna come out of your wallet.
We had all that,
Yeah.
we had all
Yep.
that.
We are really ready to go on this as far as like what type of publications and everything we wanna do. It's just really deciding to do it, and I think we're at that point.
I know it's a lot of work by you, Corey, and your staff, but I know you guys do a great job.
Yep, absolutely. It's what you came to
Well-
Williamston for. If you were in his interviews, you knew that he did his homework and he knew infrastructure was our
He
biggest
did.
problem.
Well, I think that line item analysis of what would have to go away to make
Right.
that happen right now is pretty,
Yeah.
pretty
It
relevant
is.
too.
It is because that's
It's all
one thing
part
that
of the
we've
message.
always,
Yep.
you know, people
Not
have
that it's
always
an ultimatum,
said.
like Gina was saying, right,
But very few communities have lead pickup,
Yeah,
you know, the snow removal like we have.
yep,
Our
yep.
snow removal is like, people in Alaska could learn from us.
I know,
I mean, 24/7 police coverage.
yep, exactly.
don't
And you
know
know,
why
and
the
here's the
county
thing
officer
too,
ever
we
votes.
always stay within budget for everything that we need. Chief is so frugal over there with, you know, what he asks for and requests. We've never gone outside or over budget. So, yeah, I think you spell it out for
So
him.
we just would need to put it on as action item in the first quarter, January hopefully,
Well,
or
February,
February,
maybe.
close there.
well, there's some, you have to consult, I think you should, with, bond council.
Yeah, we have to bring them in
Okay.
again,
I
like
can't remember
we
the
had.
gentleman's name,
Yep.
but we had a meeting with him
Yeah.
last year.
Were you here for that? When he came in?
Yes.
Yeah, that was my first week.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Corey,
so just call him up and say, hey, can you come do that again for us? We got new members and just gotta,
But I think Jeff's right, everyone, I mean, everyone's right, transparency is.
yeah, it's huge.
That's the key to the success of it.
Yeah, we're not trying to slip anything through. You know, social media will be our friend, and
You mean this
I'll go
wasn't
check
the
and
real
see if
meeting we
Holly's
were
here
here
so
for?
she can get, in fact, I know she's gonna get you sworn in, Jeff, because she's got her registry book over there,
Alright.
so,
We do need some help putting the chairs back.
Yeah.
Sit in the stands.